to the Grappling with podcast. Dr. Chris Hardy and William Walker will take a deep dive into topics covering wellness and prevention, performance, recovery, and injury management. Our mission is to provide the latest science-based information to help you get the most out of your grappling journey, both on and off the mats, and help you overcome any challenges you may be grappling with. Dr. Hardy is a licensed physician and BJJ practitioner, but the contents of the podcast are meant for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. Please seek out personalized care from your own medical provider prior to implementing any medical treatment or intervention.
Excellent.
Hi.
Hello there.
Hello. Thursday.
Yes. It's nice to get a Thursday podcast.
Yes.
Makes a little more time on the weekend. Well, what's new with you?
Not much. I'm trying to think. I've eaten ice cream 3 times this week.
Mm-hmm.
He has a treasure trove of candy in the car right now.
I had 4 candy bars in the car, so I felt very secure.
Are these Easter leftovers, or do you just your stash?
I bought them at a gas station yesterday.
Okay, so no,
No.
and we should say with you, instead of bottom, you scored them.
Scored them, yeah, because
that's how you kind of use them.
Well, and some of them, yes, because just like old drug dealing days that you used to have, that you can't just go
Allegedly.
to one. Allegedly, you can't just go to one. Like I have certain spots, certain corners that I go to buy.
Yep.
To score.
The score, right.
And sometimes certain sellers are on empty or they don't got the goods. For example, Caramello bar.
Yeah.
It's a hard to find one. A lot of people like their old-fashioned Caramello bar.
Mm-hmm.
I like the king size. I don't like the little ones.
That's what I've heard.
Yep, exactly. And that I sometimes have to go to multiple spots for the Caramello bar.
I see.
Same with the Reese's Nutrageous.
Bill,
Huh?
can you please tell Chris what you told me this morning when we were leaving the house? And I was like, Bill, you got 3 candy bars. What did you tell me?
I thought didn't I just ask if one was yours?
It was a DMX reference.
Oh, yeah. Oh, DMX said always stay strapped.
Yeah.
So I always stay strapped.
Do you go with paper bag or Ziploc for your stuff?
If I feel like I went a little too hard, you know, and there's a little bit of shame,
You want to hide
I'll
it?
get a bag.
Okay.
I did that yesterday
Okay.
because I think in total we purchased 6 candy bars, a Red Bull. We threw in an RX bar just to keep it healthy.
Okay. That's all relative, right?
Yeah.
Relatively healthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how healthy they are. but-
Well, I think RX bars are pretty
Are they
good.
pretty good? Okay, I'll have to look
They're
at
the
them.
ones that have,
They just don't have organic dates in them.
Oh, okay.
they have five ingredients.
Oh, okay.
And it's like egg, nuts,
Oh, right.
you know, those.
The limited ingredient bars.
Yeah,
those are
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
good.
If you're gonna do something like that, I assume it's probably one of the better ones. But that was the cherry on top of all
I
the
see.
other stuff.
And
Payday.
what's funny is it's a nice segue into talking about performance supplements, I guess. Today.
Which I mean, sugar
Man, yeah.
performance supplement.
Loaded up.
That's why I am the way I am.
There's probably a little more to it than that, but anyway.
Is it not shocking that Bill is the way that he is with how much sugar he consumes?
You mean the way he looks?
Yes.
Hmm. Yeah.
A little bruisey.
Yeah, he's got.
Is that what we're talking about? Andrew's gonna come in here and be like, "Oh, it's weak. It's the weakest arm I ever felt."
Well, I sent you guys a little text
Yeah.
with a little thing that
Still
has
has crystals.
Yeah.
show muscles and go muscles, right?
Right.
I just thought that was.
These camera angles, I don't look very fit though, so it's snake oil sales.
Do you want to come around to this side?
It might be the side. I don't know.
I think it probably
It
is.
might be the lighting. Some asshole set up crappy lighting. in
It
here.
wasn't me, man. That's not my gig.
It's just not fitting me well.
Well, we'll change next time. We'll change around, see if this angle works better
Speaking
for
of
you.
Andrew, we went golfing, and
Is this still from last week? You went golfing when he got that really good
yeah, he got a really good shot,
shot.
but I beat the shit out of him.
Mm.
Like with a bunch. Like, it was basically like I put a bunch of bars of soap in a sock and just beat the hell out of him.
Oh, damn.
He was so sloppy drunk by the end of it because he was on tilt because he's been reading this motivational book.
Oh my gosh.
I think it's called like The Secret or something like that. And
That's
he
what
is
it's
like,
called.
he can't, he thought he found something. He thought Oprah was in his pocket and he was going to be able to just forever win at all physical endeavors.
Keeping your mind in neutral.
Oprah or Dr. Phil?
Oprah for sure.
Okay.
He's an Oprah guy.
Okay.
And so I think Oprah wrote The Secret, right?
No, she
No.
didn't write The Secret, but she definitely.
She pushed it.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And he thought the time before that we played golf, he did really well and he beat me. First time in his life. And he thought that he found something because he reads The Secret every night. So then we play again and he's getting mollywopped. Like I'm a bully and he's a little child and he can't do anything.
So he was unable to manifest
Right.
a win.
Right. And so
Okay.
he turned to the bottle and started getting so sloshy. And then by the time we're finishing the hole, Glenn,
18th hole.
18th hole, Glenn Hinojosa was there. Same with Uncle Scott. Equally drunk. And he starts just challenging me to arm wrestle. He's like, you see that bench over there? You get over there, I'm going to beat your ass. It was crazy.
He did say he was going to beat your ass.
He did.
Well, after all the times on this podcast you've insulted him, I can't see why.
I don't see the connection.
Okay.
So just,
Very, very funny.
I don't know why I went into that, but I digest.
You digest well. It's obviously been bothering you, so
A little
I wanted
bit.
to get it out
It
on.
scarred me a little bit.
no better place than to put it on a podcast for everyone to
It's
hear.
tough to see
like
a
it.
friend turn to the bottle like that, is what I'm saying.
I thought he was quitting golf that day.
I did too. He threw his club.
You
pretty
guys-
far.
That's a reason why I don't play golf. I'm telling you, with my personality,
Yeah.
no. So that's probably good for everyone that I don't. That's funny though. Well,
What are we talking about?
we're
today?
going to talk about evidence-based supplements for performance specifically, not
Okay.
recovery, not anything else, but we're going to try to narrow down things that will make you perform better on the mats.
Mm.
Whether it's competition or you're having some hard rolling sessions in training. And there's not a lot of them.
Okay.
There's a ton of supplements out there. There's not a whole bunch that have a lot of strong, repeatedly verified scientific data behind them.
Okay.
And so I picked 3 of them. So we're going to kind of go over those. And many of you guys have probably heard this before, heard of these before for sure. But
At the end, are we going to inject these in me? And we'll kind of
You
gauge.
can check them.
I have a bunch of suppositories for you because you prefer that. I've heard. So
I am a pro now.
I know. So it's all good. I thought we'd start out with kind of the I got to put on my old man glasses, but
Mm.
I thought we start out with creatine. That I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago a little bit from a question.
Yeah, we touched on creatine a little bit, but we kind of deflected also because we were going to expand on it.
Yeah, creatine is, I think, it's one of the most studied, has the most evidence behind it, and it works.
I remember in high school,
Yeah.
creatine was like what dudes would take, and you were like, dang, he's basically taking steroids. And when a dude would be like, yeah, I'm eating peanut butter sandwiches and I'm taking creatine, bro, and I'm just getting freaking swole. And that was
they're probably juicing too.
maybe. I mean, Edmonds, Washington was pretty known for its juice, but it was interesting the kind of stigma that came with creatine. Like it was this wondrous thing. I think every time I've taken an actual creatine, I personally, now I never took it for very long, and I know creatine is in my current pre-workout, I think, right? Or no, it's in the recovery, the reload
BCAA,
stuff,
yeah.
the BCAA,
Mhm.
which maybe we'll touch on. But
Yep.
I know that has creatine. But how people talked about it compared to my experience with it, didn't quite translate, but
Yeah, and exactly.
maybe you'll expand on why.
Yeah, I will. And it's, you know, it's not to make you swole. You know, that's not the whole idea. It's there's some very specific adaptations and things. It gives more building blocks for a part of our energy production cycles in our body, which I'll talk about here in briefly. Kind of tell you guys why it works. But you know, it's a substance that's in our body anyway. We're just putting more of it in there to to have more available. What it is actually, it's actually made from 2 amino acids, glycine and arginine, kind of stuck together, and it's in skeletal muscle. And its effect, basically, it enhances like short-term high-intensity exercise, especially like repeated high-intensity efforts of short duration. So, you know, like, just to give an example, let's say you're on the bench and you were trying to get, I don't know, 8 reps at a certain weight. This will help those last reps be a little easier. So it's for, like I said, it's for short duration. There hasn't been a lot of studies, and it hasn't been really beneficial for endurance athletes. That's why for jiu-jitsu, you know, we have like 5-6 minute rounds that are a lot of muscular endurance, coupled with, depending on what type of rolling you're doing, especially no gi, it's probably a little more high intensity with scrambles and, you know, more wrestly type of stuff, where we're using a lot of those energy systems that are more like anaerobic, right? So what it does, there's a system, you may remember me talking about this before, and I'm saying this generally, there's 3 main energy systems that we've all learned. Arguably there's a 4th with lactate, but the main ones are aerobic metabolism, where we can burn both glucose and fat, but we have to have the presence of oxygen right there into the cell to work. So if you're working hard enough where you're exceeding your ability to deliver oxygen to your cells, your effort is, you don't have as much oxygen delivered, so you have to go then to the anaerobic without oxygen pathway, which is just pure glucose, basically. Sugar, we're burning to create energy out of that. Okay. There's a third one, it's called the phosphocreatine cycle, or shuttle, where what happens is, briefly, without getting too much into the biochemistry, we're probably all familiar with ATP, our energy currency, adenosine triphosphate. Basically,
heard that term before.
Adenosine then has 3 phosphates stuck onto it. That last, especially that last phosphate bond, adenosine triphosphate, meaning 3, that last phosphate, when you cleave it off, it releases a substantial amount of energy. And that energy is what's used to power a lot of our body's machinery, everything in our body. And that is made in aerobic metabolism with oxygen through the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, either from fat or glucose. In anaerobic metabolism, it's made through what's called glycolysis, where we take glucose and break that down and into a lesser amount of ATP. Then there's this other pathway where we're actually taking ATP that is produced in our mitochondria, bringing that in a molecule of creatine, where we actually play what's called pass the phosphate. So an ATP molecule, that third phosphate, then gets transferred to a creatine in the mitochondria, which then becomes phosphocreatine. It just means creatine with a phosphate group on it. That phosphate group goes out into, and we're talking about a muscle cell in this case, out into what we call the sarcoplasm, which is basically the big bag. So if in every cell, you can think of it as a big bag.
Sounds like Star Trek, right?
I know, right? It does. It's a big bag of stuff. The mitochondria is its own little thing within that big bag. But the rest of that is filled with fluid and all the other cellular constituents, all the muscle proteins that make things contract. Anyway, that creatine phosphate now comes out into the middle of the bag, so to speak, and provides a phosphate group for ATP to be regenerated in the working part of the muscle itself. So it's, instead of relying on waiting for the glucose to be broken down or the fat in aerobic metabolism to make the ATP, we're directly transferring that phosphate just onto an ATP in the muscle, providing a very rapid but short-lived energy production. Okay. So this stuff is like, you know, when you're doing a full-on max-out sprint for like the first 10 seconds, that's almost all the phosphocreatine cycle providing that energy.
Okay, the natural stuff that
we already have in us, okay. Right? Mm-hmm. And then if we're trying to go a little longer, more middle distance, then we start getting into anaerobic metabolism, burning glucose, or a combination of aerobic depending on intensity. But that initial high intensity stuff is...
That's why jiu-jitsu is fairly unique, or grappling in general, is because it's both. It'll hit both.
All three.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. But giving this energy system a little more to work with, has shown to be really helpful.
What about the lactating?
Yeah, so that has to be a discussion on its own. It's highly controversial here, and that's that whole thing. I go off on a rant. You hear me rant about lactic acid. People are like, oh, you're building up lactic acid. It's freaking nonsense.
Oh.
It's not true.
Shots.
Yeah.
Fired.
Well, it's not just me. There's a very prominent researcher who's basically done his whole career on lactate.
Okay.
And we're going to talk all about that.
What's the difference between a lactic acid and like a man lactating?
You're talking about
same word.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm laughing, because it is a very similar word.
Thank you.
Yeah, lactating is just a process of producing milk, right?
Okay.
Lactic acid just happens to have a name similar to that. Lactate. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Lactose is actually a sugar.
Right.
Right. This is different.
Okay.
In milk, but it has some of the similar precursors, some of the structures. The bottom line is, go off on a little tangent.
Sure.
If there's no oxygen, so glucose is broken down in the cell till it reaches something called pyruvate. If there is oxygen present, that can go into the mitochondria, into something called acetyl-CoA, and go around and make a whole bunch of ATP out of that. Okay. And that also goes through what's called the electron transport chain. You don't need to know all that, but with oxygen present, you can produce a whole bunch of ATP from things broken down from glucose. If there's no oxygen present, that pyruvate stops before it won't enter the mitochondria to produce all that energy, and it goes on a sideways pathway to produce lactate. Okay. Lactate also is accompanied by a proton, which is a hydrogen ion. So if you stick a hydrogen ion on lactate, it becomes lactic acid. All an acid is, any type of acid, is a dissociation of a hydrogen ion. And how readily that hydrogen ion pops off is how strong the acid is. When the hydrogen ion pops off, what's left is what's called its conjugate base. In other words, it's lactate versus lactic acid. So those terms get mixed up interchangeably. Again, we're getting way down the biochem route here.
Yeah, we are.
I know. Sorry about that. But the bottom line is there's hydrogen ions produced in metabolism. Okay? Those acidify the local environment and can kind of shut some things down. Okay? Muscle contraction, even the enzymes involved with energy production, which is the burning stuff you feel when you're pushing it real hard. Okay? But it's not lactate that's doing that. Okay, it's one of those, it seems like I'm splitting hairs, and we'll talk all about that, but it's important because it's misused in medicine education all the time too.
Okay.
Anyway, but back to kind of creatine, that phosphocreatine shuttle that doesn't use any of that stuff is basically just transporting phosphorylated creatine called creatine phosphate out into the working part of the muscle to provide a very readily used source of phosphates, because when that phosphate bond breaks, it releases a bunch of energy, which then powers things to work, like muscle contraction and all other kinds of things. So what we're doing with creatine is we're loading it with extra creatine to have around for this whole little shuttle process, okay? And having that available in good amounts, hear people call creatine loading. Yeah, that's what it is. We're trying to load it into our muscle cells, basically. Okay. That is a long-winded way of showing it. But I just wanted to show you that's the energy pathway we're trying to work with. Excuse me. With creatine supplementation. a lot of research has shown not only does it help, you get that last little bit out that maybe you couldn't have because we have a little extra creatine for the little shuttle. Yeah. For those high intensity things, but long-term use, we see an increase in lean muscle mass and strength with it too.
When supplementing creatine.
It works very well. And it's very safe to take for long periods of time. It's the longest studied and most studied supplement. We always thought, or what I remember was people said it like loaded up your muscles with like moisture and water or something. That was what I was going to get to. Okay. So one of the side effects, so to speak, is water retention. So you can retain a little bit of water. So if you're really worried about cutting, that's a whole nother rant go on, cutting weight by water. Yeah. Not the healthiest thing to do. Right. But if you are trying to cut weight for to make your weight class or something, and you're taking much creatine, it could kind of impede that a little bit. Yeah. It retains water a little bit.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So do you know approximately like how much water someone would retain from the creatine, and then how long it would take for someone to, if they stopped using it, for it to like be removed from the muscles?
Yeah, because your muscles use it. Yeah, you have to supplement daily.
Okay.
So if you stop, it very quickly will return to your kind of baseline levels, and you'll kind of diurese some of that water off. You'll get rid of, you'll get that. And how much, it depends on the person. I'd have to look to see if they've even looked at exactly how much it is. It's probably in the very low.
Like 1 to 2 pounds or something?
Maybe, something like that.
A 5 pound.
Yeah, typically. Yeah, it's typically not that much. Okay. But there is a little bit of water retention.
If you're like a 280 pound muscle.
Well, probably, depending on how much muscle you have on your body.
Yeah, exactly. So it would be probably a thing to talk about in percentages. Like maybe, 0.5 to 1%. I don't know of your muscle, of your body mass. I'd have to look that up. That's a good question. But, people talk about as far as, well, how do we do this? Creatine monohydrate, you can get this in bulk. It works, it's the most studied. It's cheap. And people always talk about doing a loading dose. I don't know. I've tried all that stuff. I don't know how important that loading dose is.
What is a loading dose?
In other words, they'll do for a week, they'll do like 4 times the amount for a week, every day.
Amount.
Yeah, to kind of load it in, and then you do what's called a maintenance dose after that. People have studied it both ways. I think in the long term, I don't know how much difference it makes, but if you're trying to load it up like, hey, I want to get enough in my system quickly because I have some event coming up, you could consider doing a loading dose. And the general recommendations are about 5 grams per day for your maintenance dose, which is what I do anyway.
Was there any brands that you recommend?
There's so many of them. I think they all come from like 1 or 2 manufacturers, and then someone puts their label on it. Yeah. Most cost effective, there's a thing called bulk supplements. They come in big bags. You just get creatine mono.
No flavor, no.
Yeah, nothing.
Filler.
And they're pure and they're tested well.
Okay.
Creatine monohydrate, and you can get it pretty darn cheap.
Yeah.
So, and I just added in to my, like if I do a shake in the morning, I just throw 5 grams in the morning to kind of keep that. Yeah.
Does it just sit in the, so like if someone was bulk loading, doing the 4 times or whatever, so they're doing 20 grams.
Yeah.
Does it just sit in the muscle until you use it, or does the body do something else with it?
No, it will.
Don't use it up?
Yeah, it will. So creatine is actually, its byproduct is creatinine, and that's excreted by the kidneys. Creatine is converted to creatinine. And matter of fact, that's one of the things we use in medicine to look at your kidney health, is how well you're clearing blood creatinine from your system. And so, it's disposed fairly readily. So, people end up loading it to get a bunch in the system for 5 days, like 20 grams, 5 to 7 days, and then they go back to their 5 gram per day. You can play with it and see what you think. It definitely works well for most people. Yeah.
Negatives.
Creatine doesn't have a lot. The water retention.
Really?
Yeah. Creatine is very safe. One of the ones that I
side effect profile.
Yeah. So, okay. Now, in an athlete, they're very safe. If you have any kind of kidney insufficiency, you know, you're going to have to adjust a lot of things, protein intake and all that. Like if you have kidney disease.
What was we have a family member that tested kind of poorly with kidney stuff. So they're having to adjust. Like they're not going to be, they've kicked all like colored drinks. Like
okay.
Because the food dye, I guess.
Yeah. None of those food dyes are good for you.
Yeah. Specifically for the kidney processing.
Why? I mean, I'd have to ask, why do they have, what's the cause of their kidney insufficiency? Right. Is it diabetes? Is it?
Well, do we know?
Oh, I'm sure that they're like pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
They have hypothyroidism.
Yeah.
They, you know.
So someone like that.
You'd have to watch. I'd have to. So if I have someone with what we call renal insufficiency, kidneys aren't working as well, it's graded in stages depending on. There's a whole workup to be done.
Yeah.
But you got to be careful with, especially nitrogen compounds in general, and that's how we get rid of nitrogen compounds, amino acids and protein, in the form of urea.
You just said a bunch of stuff.
What I'm saying is nitrogen compounds. Like from protein, amino acids all have nitrogen in them.
Okay.
Creatine, which is made from amino acids, those have to be cleared out of the body through the kidneys. And so if our kidneys aren't working well, you really got to watch how much of those things you're taking in, like protein, creatine.
What are some other nitrogen?
Man, there's so many of them.
I mean, just a few popular ones.
Well,
because I guess I'm not quite making the connection to like what those are.
The main one for people is protein. So steaks, anything.
Okay, not a supplement, but
no food. Yeah.
Okay.
So you got to watch how much you're doing at once, because the kidneys now eating a lot of protein will not give you kidney problems. Mm-hmm. That's always been a misconception people have. But if you already have kidney problems for like diabetes or something else,
sure,
and you have impaired clearance, anything containing the nitrogen, it gets cleared out of there. So amino acids were the building blocks for protein from steak, chicken, whatever protein you're going to talk about, or, even plant-based. They have to be cleared through the kidneys, so you have to watch how much you eat at one time.
I assume the kidney issue is typically, like you kind of already said, there's some other things going on.
Yep.
Unless they have maybe some unique autoimmune disorder where their kidneys are just not working.
Totally right.
Okay.
So, and that's why it's important to have checkups, kind of annual things. So like, hey, let's get some blood work done to make sure everything's just working well, just for a preventive thing. Most people are just fine with their kidney.
Yeah.
That's another discussion about kidney function, because that whole creatinine clearance that we look at, there's a whole problem with that for athletes, especially people carrying a lot of muscle mass. They can get a higher level of creatinine, where a doctor that doesn't know any better could say, oh, well, you have kidney problem. Mm-hmm. And they don't. It's just they have a lot of muscle mass, and part of the natural turnover of creatine in the muscle creates creatinine. And so they can look like they have too much in the blood, as if their kidneys aren't working well, and that's not the case. Mm-hmm. So it needs to be more than just that, if someone has some abnormal stuff on their, when we're looking at their kidneys, that needs to be worked up further anyway. So, but, that was all from you asking, are there any problems with it, right? In general, for healthy people, none at all.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's one that I, have no problems recommending to people.
Yeah.
If someone was wanting to get checked up before they started creatine, what labs would they want to get?
So the first thing you want to do, a comprehensive metabolic profile will give you glucose, liver function test, and your electrolytes and your kidney function, including what's called blood urea nitrogen, BUN, and creatinine. And if those two are high, it's like a little yellow flag, like, hey, maybe there's something going on here. These aren't being cleared. These are in a range where it doesn't look like they're being cleared fast. And so there's more tests to do after that to really say, is that really true? There's a 24-hour urine. There's all kinds of stuff that you do after that. Yeah. I typically run high in my creatinine. And, I've had that before with a doctor in the past, like, oh, your kidneys. I'm like, no. Here, and I've actually done that. We've done the collection, and I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So good question. Yeah. Any questions about creatine's pretty straightforward. It's a good one though.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a popular
For a
thing.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's good stuff behind it. You have anything, Olivia, on that?
Nope, that was it.
Cool.
Was there something about, I think I asked this last time, like a study about like old people they gave the creatine to and they increased
Yep.
like their muscle mass or something
Yeah.
just with supplementing creatine?
Yeah. So they're doing a lot in the geriatrics research now on creatine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you give them a strength training protocol too. They do really
And it
well
just
with
skyrockets.
it. Yeah, well, for them, yeah, because their
Yes.
baseline sucks,
Right.
right? So yeah, they end up doing very well on that.
Okay.
You just got with elderly people, you got to make sure they don't have any kidney problems, like anything else.
So it's a good one to really start doing if you're
Yeah, and of course, if you have any questions about your health and all, obviously, we're not giving medical advice, but yeah, I think it's pretty darn safe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Next, number 2 is beta alanine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you use that yourself in a like a pre-workout thing.
Yeah, we do have that in the one we take, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, what brand is that?
It's called Driven Nutrition.
Okay.
Driven Nutrition. Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those multi things that has a bunch of stuff in it.
I think so. We've kind of cycled through a couple different pre-workouts. There's certain things that we like, and one is we don't like a lot of niacin, like the itchy kind of feeling.
Yep.
They can come with some pre-workouts. I know some people actually like that, but
It's the beta alanine.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that is what's doing that.
What is this?
Beta alanine is interesting. Beta alanine in itself isn't the thing that does something helpful. It's what it makes in the body that's helpful. So beta alanine and histidine, both of which are amino acids, come together to form carnosine. Have you ever heard of carnosine?
No.
Okay. Carnosine is synthesized in muscle from beta alanine and L-histidine. With beta alanine, in biochemistry, we call if something is a rate limiting step in synthesizing something, that means that is the thing that the amount of it is what limits how much production of the end product can be there. So if we're making, if we're putting 2 shapes together to make in a puzzle, and we only have a couple of the first shape, but we have a ton of the other shapes, the first shape that we don't have as much on is the rate limiting step, in other words, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we have to, if we run out of that, we can't make the
right.
So that's why beta alanine is important in production of carnosine. And people are like, well, why can't you just take carnosine then? The problem with that is carnosine cannot be transported from the blood into the muscle. It's broken down into histidine and beta alanine in the blood. So that's why taking beta alanine can provide a building block for carnosine inside the muscle. Okay. And so again, carnosine is the thing that does the good stuff in the muscle. What it is a buffer. You guys familiar with what a buffer is?
I think so.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah. So we're maintaining pH. Our blood muscle you've heard of pH where an acid is a low pH. Drain cleaner is a very high pH.
Okay.
Water is 7.0 pH, and blood stays between 7.2 to 7.4. We're kept in a very tight range, and that all has to do with the amount of hydrogen ion running around, like we talked about earlier with acids. Acid-base balance is very, very important and tightly regulated in the body, because if you get too far either way, too much acid, it can shut things down. Too much the other way. And so we have systems in place to do that. When we're exercising at really high intensity, we're producing more of those acid, more of that hydrogen ion, okay? And what carnosine does, it kind of gloms on and snatches it, okay? And so that's what a buffer does. And so it kind of reduces that acidic environment in the muscle, because what's interesting is the feeling of fatigue you have when you're doing intense work is from hydrogen ion, the local environment becoming acidic, which inhibits muscle contraction and energy production. So all those energy production systems like glycolysis and all that, it tends to shut them down, okay? And so by having enough beta alanine in that can get into the muscle can readily produce a lot of carnosine. Okay. Which then buffers as you're let's say we're rolling really hard.
Yeah.
And we're in the 5th minute of like a 6-minute roll and we're dying, right? That's because we're getting that local acidic environment. One of the things that happens is, and so when we have enough of this beta alanine and carnosine in there before, we can kind of scarf up some of those hydrogen ions and keep that acidic environment from becoming too acidic as quick, thus giving you a little more, you can prolong your intensity a little longer, I guess is the bottom line of how this works. But I like to tell you, kind of how we think this all works is important too. So that's the main thing this thing does.
So when you're looking at pre-workouts, try to find one with beta alanine.
Yeah, and the problem exactly, but the problem with beta alanine for a lot of people when they're dosing it, a lot of people get these things called paresthesias in medical terminology. Those are like the burny, itchy type of stuff. People get like niacin flushes like you talked about before. It's similar to the point where some people, they can't stand it.
Yeah.
So they do make sustained release, more slower release ones. So that tends to help a little bit with that.
Is that called something specific? Or
you can look at beta alanine; it will say sustained release.
Okay.
You can, the supplement companies have caught on to that, so they're making, and they'll advertise it as sustained release. What the recommendations are for doses, as far as the research has shown, when we kind of put it all together, the range is between 3 to 6 grams per day, split it up into doses. So. This isn't one that you're like, oh, I got to take it right before. This is one if you want to keep that amount of carnosine in the muscle, you would do this kind of split doses. The reason why split doses is because 3 to 6 grams at once are going to put some people on fire.
Right.
So that's why they recommend the split doses for
what
people.
About the dudes that are like just dry shooting like 3 scoops of pre-workout? Have you ever seen that?
No, they're savages. I don't know.
There's some people that are, and I don't know why. I think it's kind of like just a popular gag thing where they're just literally taking a scoop of the powdered pre-workout and just no water,
and just to see how much they can burn,
and then just I don't know. I think it's just more of like this is hardcore.
It's kind of stupid.
Parkour.
Things are absorbed better in a liquid medium.
That's
you know what I mean? I mean, just
it
put a little bit of, how about with a glass of water?
Yeah.
I mean,
I've seen people do it because they say they don't want to sit there and like sip on something. So they'll take it and then they'll take a big chug of water and then down it instead of having to just sit there and sip on.
Yeah, whatever. Some people like certain things. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems a little intense.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I mean, now I will say if some people want to watch the amount of volume they're drinking right before, or, if you just load up on a ton of fluid before, you're going to feel a little, got too much. Yeah. So there might be something to that. Maybe if they're thinking that way.
Okay.
But, a little bit of fluid always helps the things get absorbed too.
Is there something to a little bit off subject?
Yeah.
As you know, I do. But we're talking about drinking a lot of fluid.
Yeah.
Which makes me think of peeing.
Okay.
So, when you drink a lot of beers, right? And maybe you're 5 beers in. It's a lot of ounces. And you don't got to pee, right? But then you go pee. The time comes. Some people say the seal has been broken. You've heard that?
No.
You broke the seal?
Really?
You never heard that? It's not even just a drinking thing. Like you just drank a bunch of fluid and you don't pee. But then when you go pee the first time, now you got to pee every 35 seconds.
Oh, I see what
That's
you're
an
saying.
exaggeration. But
no, like
you have to pee a lot now.
all of a sudden, yeah.
Yeah. So the seal has been broken. Is that real? What is that? What's happening?
I would have to just guess.
Give it to me.
I would say it probably has to do. The reason why you have an urge to go is due to the bladder filling. Okay. And sometimes that can be with alcohol. Some of your, alcohol affects your nervous system. that whole sensation with your bladder is controlled by the nervous system. You could have, I'm just speculating because I'd have to look into it. You probably have inhibited some of that process a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, once it's kind of like, all right, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you basically probably have incomplete emptying.
Mm-hmm. Even though you could have one of those, what was that movie with Tom Hanks? Where the Peaches.
That was
Forrest
A League
Gump?
of Their Own.
League of Their Own.
Oh yeah.
And
where he was the coach.
Madonna's like timing is like, that's some good peeing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's probably has to do with the function of the bladder at that point, when the influence of alcohol on it. And then once you probably have delayed your urge sensation. And then once you start, you're getting incomplete emptying. So then you're having to frequently urinate.
Is it true that when you feel that urge to go pee, like your bladder's only like 25% full?
Yeah, of course.
Like it's not even close to.
No, because because dummies like us will sit there and hold it.
Yeah.
There has to be there's a lot of wiggle room there in the body. Yeah.
The body just gets.
Yeah, I know this guy's a savage and he's going to sit there and hold it. So I'm going to feel like at 50%, you got to really go.
I've never been called a savage for being able to hold my pee for a long time. Take that.
Okay. But I mean, that's what your body's that's probably why it has the systems in there. Yeah. To little, you know, keep everything safe a little bit. So you're not like, because, you know, there's some dummy that if we didn't have that,
right,
they'd probably burst their bladder or something.
Isn't it really like, it's not, especially for men, it's not good to hold your pee? I thought it was something like with your downstairs operations.
Prostate?
That too.
I don't know, man.
I thought there was something like you shouldn't, like it's not good to hold your pee.
I mean, you need to pee for a reason. We're trying to, you know, your body's trying to maintain its fluid balance, its electrolyte balance. There's a whole reason why the kidneys are filtering all that stuff and trying to get rid of it. So it's there for a reason. But I mean, I don't know how, you know, I mean, how long are we talking about? You know,
3 weeks.
Yeah, obviously that's a problem. You know, obviously that's a problem.
Okay, why in the morning does it hurt so bad?
You might have a problem, man.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it wakes me up in the morning. It'll be like 7 a.m. I'm like, I can just chill, but I can't. It like I have to pee so bad sometimes.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Why do you have to go? Because your body's telling you we got to empty this because we haven't done it.
Intense.
Well,
I feel like I didn't drink at night.
No, but you know, you have these diurnal things like, you know, cortisol's rising. There's all kinds of things going on. Your body's like, hey, I get ready for activity. I got to get rid of this storage here.
You never have that? You're like 90.
No, I'm the opposite. I'm up like twice during the night.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But you got to go though, right?
Yeah, I got to go. Yeah, that's different though.
Okay,
that's a different reason.
I got a question since we're on bladders.
Oh, man, here we go.
Why is it that there's some days where you barely drink anything and you have to go like every hour, and then there's other days where you're drinking and drinking and drinking like 5 bottles of water and you don't need to go at all?
It depends on your hydration status. It depends on your diet.
You're hydrated every day.
Okay. It depends on your diet too. So if you are, for instance, people that, let's say that I've cut out carbohydrate and I have a lot of muscle glycogen or liver glycogen stored. Glucose and glycogen carries a whole bunch of water with it. And as you dispose of that and get rid of it, the water is then released and you got to go regardless of what you were taking in.
Okay.
So there's something with that too. You probably heard people when they first start on a low carb diet in the first week, they're like, I dropped 10 pounds. I'm like, it ain't fat. There's a lot of water coming out.
So for example, yesterday after training, I ate 5 pieces of French toast made by my lovely wife.
Nice.
Full-size pieces.
Peanut butter?
I didn't do peanut butter.
No.
Just powdered sugar?
Powdered
okay,
sugar.
okay. You have a thing. Okay.
Yeah, a little thing. My dogs ate all the peanut butter, so I couldn't.
Oh.
Yeah. That's another story.
So, but you had?
I had a bunch of French toast.
Okay.
So would that be like the next day? Maybe like there could be an effect to how much water.
Oh, for sure.
Without peeing.
Yeah, there's an osmotic effect with that too. It pulls water with it. A big glucose load, and glycogen does for sure. Okay. Yeah. You know, things like there's so many things, Olivia, that can influence that, not just how much you're drinking. And now if you're drinking a whole lot and you're not, and your body's like, oh, I guess it needed it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's just so weird how there's that like fluctuation. It's not all the time. Normally it's normal, but sometimes there's a times where you literally are like, I barely drink anything, and you're just, in the bathroom constantly. And then there's other days where you're drinking a ton and you're like, I only had to use the bathroom once, which normally on other days you would have been like, I would have been
there's
in the
also
bathroom like 10 times.
There's also things that can give you more of an urgency in the bladder too. Caffeine, things like that too. There's other things you
diuretics.
Yeah. And that can, you can feel like you got to go. Have you ever noticed, at least I have, like a couple years ago before a competition, I went to the bathroom already, and then I'm there. I'm like, oh crap, I gotta go again. It's like, and then you go out there and you squeak out maybe a test tube.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. The state of your nervous system can influence the urgency that you may or may not have. Even there's very little in the bladder, so it's not just the amount of fluid. There's that too.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that happen to anyone else?
Oh,
yes.
Literally. Actually, the last competition I did a little Instagram post that said I was having bubble guts.
Oh yeah, you did. I saved that one.
I wasn't like being serious, but it was that feeling. Like I go pee, I come back, I'm warming up. Oh my gosh, I feel like
I gotta pee again.
Adrenaline.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's the sympathetic
the
nervous system.
Empty the.
Yep, for sure.
So
Yep, I agree.
Okay.
That's a
Good.
I like that question. Yeah, I like it.
Good bladder question, honey.
Always a good day for a bladder question.
Yeah. So was that the end of?
That's real. Like I said, there's not. I mean, yeah, and there's a lot of good research behind that beta alanine via carnosine really buffers that hydrogen ion pretty well, and actually can help you. The bottom line is, it helps you prolong that period where you might have fatigued already.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is it staving off like soreness? Or
No, soreness is
or not soreness,
hold that
but like yeah.
It
muscle
is
fatigue is what you're saying.
and related directly to they think that acidic environment that happens during high intensity exercise producing the hydrogen ion. It helps kind of scarf those up, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah, so then that keeps the environment less acidic, and then everything's working better. You don't get the muscle contractions are still working. Right. You're prolonging that a little bit, so you get a little more out of it, and your rolls could be higher intensity for longer.
Yeah,
is the theory behind that.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions on that one?
I don't think so.
This next one is there's a little more caveats to it. There's definitely good research behind it, but it's a little weird. So it's sodium bicarbonate. You guys know what that is?
Heard of it, don't know about
it's
it.
Baking soda.
I was going to say baking
It's exactly
soda?
what it is.
Okay.
It's baking soda. So if you were to get baking soda to use for this purpose, make sure you're getting just pure sodium bicarbonate, not, some of them you get for your refrigerator to make,
Yeah.
you don't want like lavender scent or something like that when you're trying to,
If you eat baking soda and you drink vinegar, will you have an explosion in your stomach?
No.
Okay.
So what is the baking soda basically? Sodium bicarbonate helps raise the pH. Vinegar lowers it. So we have an acid base thing going on with those two. Yeah.
Why that question?
They do
come
foam,
up?
right?
They can.
It foams, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't.
People use it for cleaning in their sinks.
Sure, but my point is, it's not a good idea to down a bunch of baking soda then chug some vinegar behind it. But if it's just part of your food, if you have, you're not gonna. It's not like eat Pop Rocks and drink a soda and your stomach's gonna blow up.
Right.
Like the Mentos or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good idea. I mean, that just would be a stupid thing to do. But fine. I've never seen it happen, so I don't know. It's probably not smart, though.
Do not do this.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound like something that would be good to do at all.
Yeah.
Again, for the same reason carnosine does, sodium bicarbonate acts as a blood buffer again. So not as much in the muscle itself, though. The difference between the beta-alanine turning to carnosine inside the muscle is it helps inside the muscle, the acid environment inside the muscle itself. Okay. Sodium bicarbonate helps buffer the increased acidity of the blood itself, which in turn will indirectly affect the pH, or the amount of acid inside the muscle. Basically, what happens is you take bicarbonate in orally, eat it, drink it, actually, and it gets into the blood, and you start to get a trend towards, you heard of alkalizing. You've heard of alkaline water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alkaline just means the opposite of acidic. Okay, so we're going in that way, and that's what sodium bicarbonate does. And so what it does is when you raise the pH in the blood, which means decreased hydrogen ions, because the more hydrogen ions you have, the more acidic it is. When you raise the pH, it means less hydrogen ion. So if you have two compartments, one with low hydrogen ion and one with high hydrogen ion, there is a natural gradient that is established for the area of higher concentration to flow to the area of lower concentration. So in this case, blood in a muscle cell, if you take the hydrogen ion out here in the blood, then the buildup of hydrogen ion due to intense exercise in the muscle, that will then flow through that gradient from high to low. Does that make sense? And so that's how it indirectly affects the acid in the muscle itself.
So if you're buying some water from a gas station, should
Yep.
you get the one that has that stuff in it?
I'd have to look at each individual product. Some of it's a bunch of nonsense. Okay, the alkaline water and all that stuff. It depends. What they're talking about here is actually taking baking soda, pure sodium bicarbonate, putting it in water, mixing it, and drinking it. Okay. This is the one where timing matters. Okay. This is a little more work intensive. So you'd want to dose this 1 to 2 hours prior to your training session.
Okay.
Okay. It's not like and you definitely, this isn't something that you should be doing all day long. The biggest problem people have with this is GI upset, is stomach upset. You're supposed to take it with the dose we'll talk about here in a second. You're supposed to take it with about 16 ounces of water, 1 to 2 hours before. And they found that if you take it with a little bit of carbohydrate, it seems to help the stomach upset a little bit. So that's something you can play with. Now,
When you say stomach upset,
yeah, like cramping.
okay, so not like bowels.
Not like
Well,
your
I
butt's
mean,
going crazy.
sure. I mean, you certainly could upset that and have, if you start out like just super loading, and I'll get to that in a second, what I'd recommend people do if they want to start this. Let's say you overdo this. Yeah, you could have stomach cramping. It could lead to diarrhea and stuff like that, for sure.
I call that confetti butt.
Confetti butt?
Yeah,
That's not a good one. I can picture that.
exactly.
Yeah, ain't good.
It's bad
Yeah. Think Mardi Gras, but even grosser.
in your toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, party poppers.
Yeah. So no confetti butt.
Okay.
So this is what the research says. Okay. I've never done this amount. Let's
Okay.
be clear. I'm just telling you, I'm just pulling from a bunch of research articles here. The consensus is, and I've translated this, they put it in grams per kilograms. I've translated this into grams per pound of body weight, because most people don't, at least here in the US, don't know how many kilograms they weigh.
Yeah.
So it turns out to be about 0.1 grams per pound. So if you're 170 pounds, it's like 17 grams. And what you would do is get your box out and your scooper and your scale in the kitchen and weigh it out, right? I wouldn't start that high.
Okay.
I would really just play around with it because let's just say we're a 170 pound person. And the research says that what they've shown, the max benefit is for that amount per body weight. And you're like, no, I've never done this before. I'm going to go for it. You may have a problem. Okay. You may need to get your, to start off with like, hey, instead of that, let me do a third of that at first.
Yeah.
See how I tolerate it. I just recommend that with anything, because everyone has different sensitivities and all that. And this is in a healthy person with no other issues, because people with kidney problems can also develop what's called acid-base balance disorders. And that can get really messy. So
Okay. Like
if you
literally messy.
in a lot of way bad
Oh,
actually,
okay.
yeah. So acid base, you can get into acidosis and things like that. You can get in the hospital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not good. So the caveat is you're healthy, you get your checkups, you make sure that everything's fine, you know, have good kidney function, you know, you're not diabetic or anything like that. And even then I would say, you know, I would, if I was doing this personally, which I'll probably play around with, I'm gonna start, you know, I'm 180 pounds, give or take, 178. So I, you know, 17 or 18 grams. There's no way I would do that right away,
Right.
without testing the waters
Half
a little
that
bit.
maybe.
I would do a third of it probably. I'll probably go, you know, like 6 grams.
So, in layman's terms, because we went through what it's chemically doing and stuff like that, what's the benefit?
Yeah, the benefit is very similar to that of beta alanine.
Okay.
But it just has a different mechanism. So they could be additive too. So we're buffering hydrogen ion. As we exercise maximally and we're producing a lot of that acid, it's buffering that acid, but in an indirect mechanism.
So, and it's okay to stack these. You're taking beta alanine.
Again, I would do them, if you're doing any, the best recommendation I can do if you're adding anything into a regimen, supplement regimen, is you don't like do 2 new things at once. Okay. Let me try the beta alanine first, see how I tolerate that. Okay, maybe I'll add a little bit of bicarb and see how that works. Okay, you know, so I always recommend caution, and you know, just I'm giving you stuff right from what the research has shown and sports science research. But you know, there shouldn't be a problem with those necessarily. Right. But you know,
introducing anything new to your system.
Yeah. I would be very careful with that, especially when we're messing with, you know, with buffering systems and all that. And people, and with this, more is not better. Right. You can get into real trouble, like if you got
like a protein shake or a creatine or a pre-workout. How some people be like, well, I'm going to double scoop this.
Totally.
Like this isn't what to do that way.
No, because you know this range is there for a reason. And you know when you're talking about things that are buffering, especially blood buffering, and you do a huge load, you can mess up your acid-base balance too. Even though your kidneys are pretty damn good about sorting that stuff out, but you know I wouldn't get crazy with it. I mean, there's, you know, they've studied these things extensively, and even their recommendations, like I said, I would start slower. And it's kind of introduce one at a time. So to kind of recap, the beta alanine and the bicarb or baking soda both are at buffering. Kind of scarf up some of those hydrogen ions to reduce the acidity, which will help kind of stave off fatigue. And where the creatine is actually providing a thing, kind of a building block for one of our energy producing systems to give us more energy a little longer for those high intensity things. So together you can see how, you know, in a high intensity type of sport with repetitive high intensity things, that it makes sense why it's beneficial.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And believe it or not, I mean, the other one that I didn't cover that has a lot of research behind it is caffeine.
That's what I was just going to ask about. I was wondering how that works.
Yeah. But caffeine hasn't been studied. It's been studied in the endurance communities a lot more. I'm sure, you know, people have used it for, I found for me, that stuff makes me super jittery. I already have a problem with.
We have a Brazilian brown belt at our gym that he drinks coffee right as he's about to walk on the mat.
That's true.
Like just black coffee.
Yeah. And it's certainly, you know, it's basically you're ramping up your sympathetic nervous system. I mean, it definitely works, but I'd have to look at the research specific. I've tailored this specifically for grappling. And, you know, I was trying to find some research that kind of supported or something similar energetic systems, right?
I think the pre-workout that we mentioned earlier that I take, because you haven't been taking it recently, right? Because it has caffeine.
Yeah, but I actually did take a quarter of a scoop because I haven't been taking.
You're a heathen.
Twice. Okay.
You're the devil. So it has caffeine in it as well.
Yeah, and you know, some people are like myself are super sensitive to caffeine, and some people do great with it. Yeah. So I mean, that caffeine is another one of the others that is highly studied and definitely has benefit. But like I said, it's more the runner types. And,
Yeah.
that kind of thing that I've seen most of the research in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to Google sodium bicarbonate and see about that for workouts. And an article, well, two different ones, said that creatine and sodium bicarbonate work synergistically.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a made up word.
So basically, it's kind of what we were just saying, that we have sodium bicarb doing the buffering of the acid, while we have the creatine providing building blocks for the energy production. So as we're doing max effort type of workouts, creatine is providing a little more fuel, where bicarb or beta alanine via carnosine is providing a buffering system on the other end to kind of stave off fatigue.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's synergistically just means working together.
We probably need to get a sponsor of some sort or create our own pre-workout.
We totally could.
Oh,
Carrie and I are both
sodium bicarbonate, alanine.
Carrie and I are both biochemists before we were doctors. So
Right.
I mean, yeah, but if we did that,
I'm a good taste tester.
Oh my gosh, it needs to taste like a Nutrageous.
Or mint chocolate chip ice cream.
Okay.
You know what though? He's an evil genius with that stuff.
Say
And
it again.
so
Say it again.
You're an evil genius with candy bars.
Thank you.
And with that kind of, skill set
Right.
combined with the chemistry,
Right.
it might be a winner.
Just
I
saying.
mean, who's making Nutrageous pre-energy,
That's what I'm
pre-workout drinks?
saying.
I know. So I'm saying too.
Mom's going to be proud.
All right, I'm down with it.
Okay.
See, right here on the podcast, we have a business venture.
Just saying. What's the name? Okay, we won't even.
No, someone to steal it.
Power bottom.
Power bottom.
Power bottom pre-workout. Okay. Good.
Remember Super Pump?
Oh,
They called it Super Dope.
Oh my God.
That was my. So any pre-workout we get, we just call it Super Pump. Because
Okay.
we used to have this one called Super Pump, but some people had less than desirable reactions, and they called it Super Dump. Some of the stuff you were talking about.
Legit.
Yeah. GI distress is what the fancy people call it. Normal people call it confetti butt.
Confetti butt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super normal people call it confetti butt. We'd have to think about the name. I thought your jiu-jitsu instructional is called Power Bottom. So
Well, I was until Craig Jones stole it.
he stole that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true. He
has
does have
one
a
called Power
tutorial.
Bottom.
Yeah.
What?
I saw it yesterday on
Piece
BJJ
of
Fanatics.
Yeah.
How dare he?
Yeah. I messaged him. He didn't respond.
We
It's weird.
coined that a couple years ago
quite a while ago.
to make fun of you.
I didn't think of it that way, but
It was
yeah.
Andrew and I actually
I
did,
remember you guys saying it to me. I didn't think
and
it
said that we were
was
going to do a DVD set for you.
making fun of me.
We were absolutely at your expense.
I took it more as like endearing.
A compliment?
Yeah. I'm powerful from the bottom.
There's no doubt.
Thank you.
There's no doubt about that.
Thank you.
With or without a lapel. I mean,
With or without. You know what? Jake beats the shit out of me. Can I say that? He has like the kryptonite to my guard.
yeah, to most people's guards actually.
I get it. But it's like unique. He like really beats me up, and it kind of like
He
makes
has
me-
a style similar to me when I roll with him as Aurelius a little bit,
Okay, yeah.
as far as
I can see that, yeah.
a bit.
Very like once he's kind of like Hickson. Once he gets to a position,
Yes.
I do not go back.
Yes.
Like it frustrates me.
Very-
Very keeps me up at night.
We have some very tough purple belts.
Yeah, and I haven't told him.
Well, now you have, and he listens to this.
Does he?
Yes.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he's
Oh.
yes. Yes. And if he doesn't, I will make sure
Shout
that he
out to
does.
Jake.
Yeah.
State Farm.
Yeah, and he's an amazing beard too. So
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm jealous of it.
Yeah.
Did you have any others?
and I had 3 because those
Oh,
are the
yeah.
ones I thought were evidence based first,
Okay.
and then also applied the most to our martial art.
Okay. What about because we're talking about pre-workout specifically?
Mhm.
That's what today's supplement.
Yeah, performance.
Yeah.
hmm
And we've talked about this briefly, like what I like, and that's get a little bit of fruit.
Yeah.
And when I say a little bit, I mean like maybe an hour before, because I don't do well with eating anything of substance really within a couple hours of training.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like a banana or half a banana,
Mhm.
maybe a couple of those cutie little oranges, the small ones, maybe a couple slices of watermelon, a cantaloupe.
Mhm.
Why does that feel so much better? Does it have something to do with the blood sugar?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah, you're giving yourself a little more glucose to work with.
Mhm.
You know, ideally, and it all depends on how much you're going to roll. I mean,
Yeah.
again, when you put something in, you want it to be utilized,
Mhm.
right? Now, if you haven't refed your muscle glycogen from your roll before, you know, that's why we do those refeeds after,
Mhm.
right? But given a little bit of, you know, circulating, readily available glucose can help, as long as it doesn't get too much.
What about taking a benefit, negative, taking a starchy carb before?
Yeah, same idea.
Okay.
But I would make sure you do one that's rapidly digestible. Like we were just talking about, like something,
Rice.
yeah, right, or
Like,
even
what'd you say?
Sugar.
yeah. There's a reason why, and they're not high quality carbohydrate, and there's not a lot of
Right.
nutrient value in these things, but we're not using it for that.
But what are a couple of those?
Like you were talking about, like a banana's good, an orange.
Okay, so like
Yeah.
a fruit.
Yeah, a fruit that has a lot of kind of water content is not as fibrous.
I said carb, but I meant like a starchy or something like that.
Oh, so just to be clear, starches are carbohydrates, fibrous carbohydrate, sugar's carbohydrate.
Right.
So, but when people say carbs, what people are usually meaning is some type of starch or some type of sugar.
Right.
Yeah. So, but you're just talking about a starchy carbohydrate.
Yeah, like what I do is the sugary one, which
Uh-huh.
is the fruit.
Right.
And I'm asking if, you know, if someone wants to, is there any benefit to some of the starchy ones, or like a protein bar or something like that, like a Nutri-Grain bar, or you know, those kind of things?
Yeah. The problem is you want this stuff digested very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want it hanging around in your stomach and pulling all that blood into your, because you know that's what happens.
Mhm.
It kind of shunts some blood into your digestive tract, and if you have something hanging around in there too long, you know it's not fun to
Just
roll
the
with.
starchy stuff in the bread.
It depends on how much fiber is involved with it. So that's the difference between like white rice and brown rice.
Okay.
Right. White rice is more digestible,
Mm.
rapidly digestible. Right. You know, a banana over an apple. An apple is a lot more fibrous.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So better the
Yeah,
banana
as far
in
as
that scenario.
Quicker.
Okay, quicker.
You want something that is digested quickly.
Less
And
fiber.
yeah.
Okay.
Fiber usually is a kind of no bueno right before training.
Okay. What was I doing to my body when I was drinking like 4 beers on the way to jiu-jitsu?
Well, so you're putting a pretty hard strain on the liver too, because it's got to metabolize that stuff, right? I mean, I don't know. I've seen people do a lot of stuff. It's not optimal. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, as we get older, we have less and less of a window for, you know, chicanery,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it was kind of like the geriatrics with the creatine, though, because my baseline was so low that it was like, well, if I just didn't drink beers on the way to jiu-jitsu,
Mhm.
actually did pretty good.
right.
But
I would suggest maybe an orange or some type of rapidly digestible carb
over
versus
an IPA?
as far as for performance. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm not talking about taste or satisfaction.
Sure.
I'm talking about just from a, yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
You're making the liver work real hard.
I feel like an orange tastes better than an IPA. That's just me.
For sure it does.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
There's, you
And I
know,
wouldn't drink IPAs usually. It would be some sort of cheap beer.
do you know, I mean, you guys know how good like a piece of orange tastes after rolling?
Trust me, yes.
Well, it's because the
Yeah.
brain's like, yes, we
Right.
need that, you know, when you're craving that.
That's one of the, usually what happens is we get home and if we don't go to, well, on Saturdays we might go out to lunch, but
Mhm.
when we get home from the night class
Mhm.
or even the midday,
Mhm.
it's just, I get a couple oranges, banana,
Man,
fruit.
it's good stuff.
So
Yeah, I like it.
good. Okay. You got any questions, Liv?
Only ones that have nothing to do with this particular episode.
Well, why don't you just give us one or two?
Okay, so Paul Saladino.
Uh-huh.
I noticed that now he does not just meat,
Mm-hmm.
but fruit.
Yep.
And raw milk and
Mhm.
honey.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between like how fruit is processed in your body versus like another type of carb?
Okay. As opposed to vegetables.
Or even like bread or
Mhm.
potatoes.
So let's go back to, yeah, exactly. So fruit in general, okay, I'm making a general statement here. I'm not, there might be exceptions. Fruits have seeds typically. Fruit, the way they kind of propagate is they entice animals to eat them. The animals then poop out their seeds, basically have new plants. Okay, so fruit is that way, that high sugar content. A lot of it is, that's its thing. It wants to be, that part wants to be eaten, so then it can propagate and make new fruit plants. Because of that, they tend to have less anti-predation chemicals to stop that from happening, as a lot of plants do, like vegetables and stuff, including potatoes and the lectins, the phytates in grains. Remember when we were talking about grains, all those anti-predation type of things? So they're in higher concentrations in those type of foods. Thus, in his point is, I've read his book, and his point is a lot of these, even though a lot of these anti-predation chemicals, isoflavones, polyphenols, all these type of things that are, we've been told are good for us, they tend to work through that hormesis mechanism where, you give something that's a little potentially harmful at high doses, it actually has beneficial effects, where the fruit doesn't have those. And his point is maybe they're not all so beneficial. They'll produce elevation of your antioxidant enzyme systems, but maybe it's not as good as we think it is, those anti-predation chemicals, right? That's his point. That's his point in a nutshell, just paraphrasing it. But with fruit, you have less of those type of things, and then so you're not getting kind of that toxin load, so to speak.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now you said raw dairy.
Yeah, raw dairy.
So that's the dairy thing is like an episode in itself. It depends on your ancestry. Are you Northern European? Are you Asian? Are you Middle Eastern? You'll have a different tolerance for dairy in general. And raw dairy itself, like, in an optimal situation, like I had a family farm and I'm milking my own cow, I know the health of those animals. I know I know my hygienic practices in getting the milk. It's pretty safe and it's definitely more nutritious. The problem is at scale. The problem with raw milk is the infection risk. Like if something isn't, if they're not being handled right, if the cows are sick and have infection, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in an ideal circumstance, it's great. And people even people that tend not to tolerate dairy do better with raw milk because it has all the enzyme components and things that help break it down, actually. Right. You're basically drinking it just as the calf was meant to drink it,
right? As
opposed to pasteurizing it, knocking out these enzymes, homogenizing this whole 9 yards, so it's shelf stable and prevent infection, right? And that's the biggest reason why we do that for mass production of dairy. And many will argue correctly, it's not near the food that it is raw. Right. But again, you see what at scale, raw milk can be a problem. But if like, hey, I know Joe, he's right down the street. He has his own little boutique dairy farm, and I know, I've seen his whole, then, you can feel pretty safe. And then the honey also is another just simple carbohydrate, simple sugar that has a lot of other kind of raw honey, especially, that has some good benefits.
Does it not have a glycemic index? Like, Is it similar to like monk fruit and stuff like that? Where
The honey's pretty high.
okay.
We want that though. If we're so it depends on when would you eat honey?
Right. With your refeed and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. Right? Does that make sense? Or maybe I'll have a little bit before training.
Right.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would make sense to me because his whole thing.
But don't put it on your like bagel in the morning
without doing anything.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
what is that? That's sugar and then more sugar.
Yeah. Right.
And then you're like, oh crap, I got nowhere for this to go.
Yeah.
You know,
And then it just
goes into fat and that whole 9 yards.
Got it.
But yeah, it's all context is important. But I'm not trying to talk for Dr. Saladino, but but from reading his book, his point is to minimize these kind of anti-predation chemicals.
Mm.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's why fruit seems to be more favorable. Even avocado, which is not a vegetable, it's a fruit. That's what I eat a lot of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like main fat source.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a very good question.
Yeah. I was just curious because I don't know. I came across it and I was like, I love fruit. So if you can eat a bunch of it and eat, I feel like that would be more desirable than
It
eating
is,
bread or
but I would
something.
never tell a diabetic that doesn't
Well, yeah.
exercise. No, but you see the context, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, I have an orange juice. No, fruit juice is a pile of sugar.
Yeah.
Without the fiber, right?
Right.
And so, fine if you just did 2 hours of rolling, and you want to replete your muscle glycogen, shoot, a Pepsi will work.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's great. But
know
it's
that.
sugar, right? So, anyway, yeah.
That's me. Side note. If people have questions, I always say email or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Comment on the YouTube page. I get notified on those and see.
Oh, you do?
those. So if there's anything that someone has about a supplement or something like that, or on any of the episodes, I'll pipe those over to Chris or myself if it's something I can answer, or Olivia.
Yeah, and if you guys do that, we'll actually use them on episodes. So
Yeah.
that's the whole idea.
And it helps the old algo.
It sure does.
Old algo.
Well, you're the algo master, so
I am a master.
of chocolate and algorithms.
Yeah, I'll take it. So any other question?
No. I did forget to mention last week, though, in that podcast on women's hormones, talking about endocrine disruptors. I feel like we haven't touched on that. But...
Carrie did PhD work on that.
Oh.
She worked,
That might be its own little
environmental
thing.
estrogens and endocrine disruption she spent several years, and she's published actually on that stuff. She has papers out through the lab she was working with.
So we'll bring
At Virginia Tech.
We'll make sure we bring that one up on the.
She is
Yeah.
really good with that stuff.
Okay.
Way up to date. It's a really fascinating subject for everyone, not just women,
Yeah.
because especially for guys, we have these environmental estrogens, endocrine disruptors. We talked about the perineum,
Yeah.
aka the taint,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know if people know that one.
Well, yes. There's I forgot the researcher's name. She was on Rogan last year. She has a book out on it. It was actually really interesting.
Yeah. We'll save that one for when Carrie's back.
Okay.
And we'll talk about people's taints again.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Fast episode today. It's a quick one,
Yeah.
but a lot of good stuff. Questions, anything, email grapplingwithpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow any of the Instagram or Facebook page and message us with anything that you guys want.
Yep. I like it.
Other than that, we'll see you on the next.
Yep. See you guys.
Yeah.